Good evening. Thank you for watching our short introduction video and welcome to another great organization. I would like to extend to you all the warmest welcome. I hope it won't come as a surprise that we are gathered here today. I believe every single one of us is now very familiar with the whole Zoom gatherings, online celebrations and virtual, literally everything. We are gathered here today to share our festive spirits with each other. Usually we do our best to host our annual Christmas dinners, which is just another excuse for us all to get together, share great food and enjoy each other's company. However, this year we are unable to do that. It really has been an incredibly tough year for everyone and still is, with the ongoing virus, who by the way overstayed its welcome. I hope you are all keeping safe and following the set guidelines to keep your loved ones safe too. Unfortunately, we have all lost a loved one, or at most know someone who has lost a loved one. My heartfelt condolences to all. So just to keep the spirits up and to brighten each other's days, like our other online events this year, we have prepared one for Christmas. We are grateful for the internet. It has been there for us all during the toughest times, it really has, allowing us to still connect and exchange thoughts and prayers. A special thank you to you all for inviting us virtually to your homes and making this year's venue a little warmer during these very bitter days. This year, our chosen theme for the event is hate crime prevention. I'm excited to hear our guest speakers, and I believe we can all somewhat relate to this topic. Before I let my special guest take over, I would like to say that this pandemic really shook us all to our core. It has taken a team effort, and I thank each and every one of you for showing strength, having and giving each other hope. I wish from the bottom of my heart that this does not last any longer, and hopefully the vaccine will be distributed soon, so that we can have our normal lives back. It is the season that symbolizes love, kindness, and remembrance of the gift of eternal life made possible. I wish you all a Merry Christmas, and I wish that God blesses us all with a healthier 2021. Now, on to our guests. So our first guest is Dr. Idris Chakmak, who is one of my fellow Dialogue Society volunteers. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Chakmak. Over to you.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I would love to thank Dialogue Society for inviting me to such an important event, for giving a speech. We all know that that kind of auspicious times in all cultures, religions, communities, and nations aim to build a strong relationship between diverse elements that make the larger group. Christmas and New Year celebrations present us such an atmosphere to strengthen the relationship between various communities and cultural contexts. Starting with the title, I believe that transformation into a society with less hate crime is of course possible. It is the prospects for a paradise living together, side by side, not trespassing each other's existential barriers and social barriers. It is of course possible, but it's not totally possible to exterminate whole hate crime, which I'll explain in my speech. Today, my speech will revolve around mostly individual efforts to transform our inner selves rather than to attempt to change society, since unprecedented and unexpected COVID-19 circumstances gave us such an opportunity, or in other words, forced us to turn our communal antennae towards our deeper selves. I think such an endeavor, the struggle for self-realization, can be quite influential in proposing a solution to the problem that the title of this event denotes. As a part of philosophies like perennial philosophy, for example, we can say that every spiritual culture carries the notion that an individual soul tries to attain perfection through a conscious effort and to reach something divine, something higher than themselves. It's not possible to totally exterminate hate crime from our society as long as people survive on the universe, but it could be alleviated through a conscious effort from individuals. The individuals who attain a certain level of maturity through observing their inner selves. Non-violence is a conscious effort. Let me give you an example about this. One of my friends was driving me to somewhere and he was following the speed limits so strictly that we had several bumps. At the end, I congratulated him for pushing himself to reduce his speed. He said it was like a dog's instinct to walk or to run, so not to be appreciated. But I said no, it was a conscious effort to limit yourself from fulfilling basic instincts, even if it is such a small one like desire for speed. This is what makes us human beings. This is what makes us different from animals or other creatures in the world. Conscience, the faculty that sees the good from evil, goes hand in hand with actions all the time. They cannot be separated from each other. Faith, as the most important tenet in Islam, is mostly followed in the Quran by good deeds. This implies that faith cannot be realized without implementing good deeds in personal and communal level. Doing otherwise is not just about infringing the rights of God, but also it is about infringing the material and immaterial rights of people. The short 103rd chapter of the Quran reads, "Surely humanity is in grave loss, except such as have faith and do righteous deeds and join together in the mutual enjoining of truth and of patience and constancy." Mutual enjoining of truth following after faith and good deeds can be an essential part of alleviating the wicked waves of atrocities like hate crime or extremism. It requires a conscious effort to get rid of a condition without patience and without mutual understanding. This also reminds me the story of Everyman. In this 15th century English morality play, the allegorical character Everyman in his voyage is forsaken by his friends, beauty, strength, goods, and kindred, as all allegorical characters. They all forsake Everyman. He is accompanied to the end only by good deeds in afterlife and the judgment day. I would like to expand the moral of this tale, the significance of good deeds for afterlife, to our transient contemporary world. When people look back their own career and their relationship with others, the only things that they could be proud of, or the only things that they would do again without hesitation, are more or less the ones that can be put into the category of good deeds: helping people, contributing to community, preventing harm to society, and creating dialogue with others. Nurturing good deeds in the heart of people in the first place is an individual act as far as it is a communal act. This individual quest requires an enduring patience and constancy in accordance with the principles pointed out in the Quranic verses above. The experience of good deeds among individuals will eventually lead to the practice of living together as a community. The famous physicist David Bohm dedicated later stages of his life to understanding the meaning of dialogue. In his book on dialogue, he postulates that the dialogue doesn't have to include two people at least, but just one person, one individual can have the stream of meaning. This dialogue later becomes a shared aspect and then the glue and the cement that hold people together. It is the mutual understanding among us, through us, and between us. In the process of dialogue, we don't play against each other, but with each other. On Christmas night and following days, there is no winner of games, but pleasure that all members of family get through the process, through the time spent together. Most schools of thought specify that happiness can be achieved by making other people happy. The task of alleviating hate crime itself and consequences it inflicts upon society, communities, and individuals can only be realized through learning living together peacefully, learning the ways to strengthen the fellowship such festivities aim to develop. Lastly, I would like to say thank you to Dialogue Society to bring people from all walks of life and diverse community of Leicester together with a purpose of finding a solution to the problem of hate crime. I believe meetings like this will play a crucial role in reducing the damage caused by hate and race-motivated crimes and will lead to a foundation of new, larger platforms in preventing extremist thoughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Chakmak. The atmosphere of Christmas really does, feel heartwarming. And like you have mentioned, even though we can't change others, we can influence them through the work we put into our own principles and through our conscious efforts to eliminate hate crime. And creating dialogue with others will hopefully have an impact. Now, I would like to hand over to Darsheet Chauhan, volunteer from Leicester Hindu community. Thank you again for joining us today. On to you, Darsheet.
Namaste, everybody. Good evening, friends. It's so nice to see everybody here, and I'm very grateful to the Dialogue Society for bringing us together to have this discussion, which is a very important discussion. And I know the year's been sort of taken over by COVID, but there are important issues that we do need to address. And unfortunately, hate crime is something that's there. It's very much there in our society. And I think it's always been there, and there will always be an element of it. So this discussion is so important because it's showing that, look, we as representatives of our community, particularly the community in Leicester, are willing to recognize it. And hopefully we will begin this journey of how we have all shared responsibility for acting on it. In my talk, I'm going to speak a little bit from a Hindu perspective, a little bit from my perspective on the ground as a citizen, but as an ordinary person in the community as well. So I think the first thing is, in Sanatan Dharma, in Hinduism, dvesh, hatred, is seen as a bad quality, but it's a bad quality that's in all of us, like greed, like ego, like attachment, like anger. There are so many good qualities in us, and there are bad qualities. And each of us, and I was really pleased that Dr. Chakmak, you raised that point very early in your talk, that each of us has a personal responsibility to understanding ourselves, recognizing those good qualities, working on them, but also recognizing those bad qualities and how do we control them. The first step towards the solution is recognizing that there's a problem. And when we talk about hate crime, and for me, it's a relatively new concept in policy, 20, 30 years of it. There's statute around it. There is big recognition in the police around it. There's a lot of talk on a policy level. There's a lot of data being gathered. But that's all on a very top level. What does that mean for ordinary people? What does that mean for us, on the streets? And in Hinduism, as I've said, it's seen as something that's going to be there because that's the dark side of each human being. But it's something that can be worked on. It's something that can be changed. Hate crime can be any sort of behavior, whether it be violence, whether it be verbal, whether it's against an individual or a group. So it's something that's very much there in our society. Certain groups, certain members may be attacked because of what they wear, how they look. Others may just be attacked because they're different. And that brings us on to understanding what's the cause. Often in Hinduism, and we look at the scriptures and we look at many of the examples in the scriptures that we have Ravana in the Ramayana, who we just recently talked about at Diwali time, where he represented certain bad characteristics and how they took him away from his dharma, his awareness, his duty. And often that's what these things do. But where does hatred and where does dvesh actually come from? And when we look at things that are happening in our society, where as a society, we're very quick to judge. We're very quick to point the blame. When something's happened, we need to go to the cause. When something's happened, particularly when it's bad, we need to point the finger at someone, at something. And it's very quick and easy to point the finger at something we don't understand, something or someone that's new, something or someone that doesn't fit the norm, doesn't fit what I perceive as my norm. And unfortunately, in society, that's what we're having. And then we have people across the globe in positions of responsibility, knowledgeable people, people in power, who have set the bar. And we, like sheep, follow these people. We don't question, we don't think until it affects us or affects someone we know. And it's similar with this whole COVID experience. At the beginning, there was panic, but it's not our problem. It doesn't affect us. It's somewhere else. It's somewhere else. And all of a sudden, when we learnt about our own people, people in our neighborhoods, people in our schools, people in our families being affected by it, we've all come together. Pointing the blame is very satisfying. When we point the blame, we think we've done something, we've identified it, and we've pushed it away from us. And with hate crime, we can't do that. It's got to come from within. That first step has got to come from within. And as faith communities, as other communities within the city that make up Leicester, we need to work with the organisations. We need to work with the police. Of course we do. But we somehow need to be those caveats and catalysts that bring that information to the ground. A load of police statistics and a load of statistics on prosecution are good, but what does that mean to the average person? What does that mean? How effective is hate crime, especially when there's no real definition of what hate crime is, because it changes. And that's the thing that we've got to realize. Hate crime will never be one way. It will never be one defined way of crime. It's going to change. And as society becomes very complex, as society becomes governed by many statutes, many fancy terms, we as humans, and we're all capable of it, and we're all guilty of it to a degree, we play the political correctness game. We will say what needs to be heard, but are we saying what needs to be said? And that's where dialogue's important. And as Dr. Chakmak, you've mentioned already as well, we need that mature dialogue. In any society, dialogue is important. A respected dialogue, a dialogue between friends, where we're not going to take things personally, but we are going to ask those questions. We are going to raise our hand and say, actually, I'm not aware of this. Can you tell me a little about this? Can you share what's your perspective? Can you educate me? And often, and this is from personal experience, that gyan sharing, that sharing of knowledge actually helps me perceive myself in my society. It helps perceive where I stand, and it helps highlight what my responsibility is, but it also inspires. And we can take great inspiration from each and every one of us on how we deal with these things. When we look at hate crime, and when we look at it from a position in Hinduism, one of the core principles of Sanatan Dharma is God is everywhere, in everything, in all times, from the beginning to the end. So in that respect, as a Hindu community, we should be seeing God in everything. We should be respecting everything as God's there. Just because somebody thinks different to me, just because somebody eats differently to me, just because somebody lives different to me, doesn't make me right or them wrong. There's space on this earth for all of us. And that is reflected in the diversity of Hinduism, where you'll have millions of people all following their own paths to God, but our ultimate goal is the aim. And tackling hate crime is that same thing. We all want a peaceful society. We want a belonging society. We want a society where we each feel we can contribute and we're a valid part of that. And unfortunately, hate crime puts that into disarray. It raises questions. Do you really belong here? Are you part of this community? Do you have an impact? Do you have a role? Do you have respect? And these things, even though they could be words, often words go much deeper and shake the core of our society. So as a community and as community leaders, we need to lead. We need to share examples. We need to learn. And we need to be seen to be walking with our colleagues, sharing that journey, not just with people of our own faiths, but also of different faiths, of non-faiths. Leicester, being the very diverse place that we live in, is the place that can lead the rest of the country, and indeed parts of the world, in how we achieve that. We are so blessed to have so many different people from all over the world, each with their own cultural history, and we have such a beautiful tapestry that we can celebrate. But that tapestry will only be successful when there is an open dialogue, and that dialogue needs to be continuous. We need to continually self-evaluate. We need to continually make that effort. Because as we've seen, and often in the Hindu scriptures, as we see, and indeed in a lot of the other religious scriptures that we share, those traits often come back. You think you've done it, I've achieved it, I'll move on to the next level, but because you've not kept your eye on it, slowly it's going to work its way up. And unfortunately, religion is an easy way to really invoke hate crime. And we cannot say that religion and hate crime are going to be different. They go hand in hand. Religion has a responsibility. Religious communities and other communities, we have a big responsibility. We are going to be victims often because of our religious views and practices, but equally we have that solution in our hands. We have those rules that God's given to us. We have that vision that God's created. We've got a beautiful world to live in, and we all have a duty to safeguard it. We have a duty to acknowledge people in it, to celebrate in it. I do think that, you know, we need to work with the agencies, but we need to work with ourselves. We need to work with our families. We need to work with every person in society. And this is the other key thing. When you talk about hate crime, and when I often talk to my parents or my grandparents, what they perceived as normal behavior would be seen as crime now. And it's very individual. So say, for example, when my parents emigrated here back in the 60s and 70s, the attitude towards people was very different. If those things happened today, we'd be up in arms. So it's about accepting the moment that we're in and realizing that where we come from is important. Our history is important. Our cultural values are important, but we need to recognize the present and move towards that future. And that is so important, because often what we're seeing in Leicester is lots of things happen outside of Leicester that have a big impact on the people in Leicester. And we need to achieve that balance. Some of it may not be popular, but we do need to recognize it, and we do need to work in harmony towards that. I think, you know, it's a positive step that the government recognize hate crime, because it's part of educating society on what behavior is acceptable, what's normal, but also that ordinary people have got somewhere to go. Actually, this is happening to me. It doesn't make me feel comfortable. Where can I go? But what I urge the government to do is not just let that become a load of statistics in a nice file on a shelf. We need support at grassroots levels to really take this work forward. We need tolerance, we need respect, we need love. And we also need to accept that these things are always going to be there in us and in our society. The biggest thing we can all do is work on ourselves as individuals, because if we become good individuals, that's going to reflect and manifest in the society around us. What I hope when COVID's over is that we can go back to visiting one another. We can have that physical dialogue, because that celebrates what we have got in Leicester. A few months ago, I was working on a project with bridging the gap between two different communities. And it was interesting what I saw. And what I saw surprised me. On the official level, everybody said the right things. On the official level, everybody wanted to engage. But when I went into people's homes, people that I'd known all my life, all of a sudden were opening up with things that I thought, oh my God, am I hearing this here? Is there this level of resentment? Is there this level of nervousness? Is there this level of distrust? How on earth have we got distrust in our communities when we've lived next door to each other for 10 generations? And unfortunately, that's part of the problem, that the fear that's there and the ignorance that's there is hidden. No one is coming up, no one's coming forward and raising their head above the parapet to say, we have got this problem, help us. And that we need that to happen. And I'm sure all of you will join our people in Leicester to share our experiences and help one another. So to end, I just want to say that yes, hatred is going to be there, and hatred is part of human nature. Hatred could be because someone's doing better than you. Hatred could be because someone said a mean word to you. Someone's got, you know, something different to you. But we shouldn't. We should celebrate that enrichment. We need to recognize the value, the soul, the goodness in everyone. We need to recognize that God is in everything and show that respect. We also, as faith leaders, as community leaders, need to play our responsibility honorably and honestly. Statistics can be manipulated and say things, but we're the eyes and ears on the ground. We reflect that heartbeat in our city. Finally, I want to wish everybody a very happy festive season. It's really nice to see everybody. And I know, Beza, you said we haven't got the food but the dialogue we're having is food for the soul, and that's equally important. So I wish you all very Merry Christmas and all the best for the new year. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you. Thank you. As you have emphasized, it is very important. Discussion and addressing the issue holds a very special place for us, and taking responsibility is the first step to many in helping create change. Saying what needs to be said through a respected and continuous dialogue, that's what's going to help us. Thank you so much. We will now present a short video prepared for us today to help reminisce our more interactive Christmas events. So a little throwback.
By what I know of the Dialogue Society. We need more discussion and dialogue about these matters, and the Dialogue Society provides it.
It really does feel like ages since our last get-together, doesn't it? Without further ado, I would like to hand over to Abdul Karim Gheewala, who is the Director of Federation of Muslim Organizations. Hello, and thank you for being with us here today, Abdul. Over to you.
Hello and good evening to everybody, and assalamu alaikum to those who want to understand the Arabic. Thank you very much, Dialogue Society, for organizing this very interesting event and bringing together the community representatives to share the experiences and share our thoughts and talk about the good practices in dealing with the hate crime. In 21st century Britain, and indeed in a global village that we all live in, hate has no place. It must be challenged, and we must all work together to curb the ever-increasing trend of hate violence. Ben would confirm when he talks about the statistics. The Home Office said last year that there was a 8% increase nationally of the hate crimes for varieties of reasons. The impact and the consequences of hate violence are very, very serious. And hence, we must treat this subject with most sincerity and commitment. There is no way out. My two previous speakers have already touched upon the role of the faith. And I think I want to begin from the similar kind of the stand. If I recall the final sermon of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because our contribution to prevent hate crime starts from the lessons we learn from these noble teachings. He said in his final sermon, all mankind is from Adam and Eve. An Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor does a non-Arab have any superiority over an Arab. A white has no superiority over a black, nor does a black have any superiority over a white. None have superiority over another except by piety and actions. That is the fundamental, I would say, the foundation of my upbringing when I talk about the hate crime. The sociologists, the psychologists will obviously try to analyze it from their perspectives, and there could be a range of factors that contribute in developing the hate crimes. And then there are a range of easily accessible means and sources that contribute to hate phenomena if they are not checked. Factors such as hostility, prejudices, ignorance, lack of engagements, disproportionate success stories of certain individuals or groups are directly responsible in promoting or encouraging the hate crimes. On the other hand, irresponsible print and electronic media and irresponsible use of the social media platforms fuel it up more. Also, unfortunately, many short-sighted politicians use those myths and stereotypes for a short-term political gains without considering the consequences for the marginalized groups or the communities. And we know who are the marginalized groups and communities. I'm just trying to set this context up to understand actually the whole phenomena of the hate crime to begin with. The psychologists say that it is several types of the errors in reasoning that contribute for people to actually go and act in a hateful way. Hate is opposite of love, and it originates from errors of reasoning. It's more an abstract psychological process, eventually results in the hate crime when manifested in action. So for instance, intense dislike for somebody, disliking and unappealing, the desire to eliminate the perceived enemy. There's a perception of certain people that they are our enemies, and avoiding or eliminating the dangerous others. There could be many motivated factors or motivational factors for hate crime, but I like the four significant one. Number one is thrill seeking. For some youth, for some young people, energetic young people, they engage in hate crimes just because of the excitement and drama. The second reason is the retaliation. I want to take a revenge. A desire for revenge is so strong that I want to retaliate. And as a result, I end up actually into the hate crimes. The third one is the defensive one, where the perpetrator engage in hate crimes out of a belief that they are protecting their own communities. As if they're protecting, they have the responsibility to protect their own community, and as a result, they act in a defensive way. But the fourth one is the most dangerous one, and that is known as the mission offenders. They have an ideological commitment, and they think that they are committed by people who consider themselves as crusaders or the protectors or the one who safeguards the religious or the racial issues. And their mission is the total war against the member of the rival race or a rival religion. And it is the most dangerous category of the hate crime. Unfortunately, those who commit the hate crimes, if you go and ask them, they will try to offer, however false the justification is, they will always try to offer some kind of justification based on their errors in reasoning and thinking. But when we say that there is errors in reasoning and thinking that actually motivate people, then I think there is a hope to rectify the situation as well. And I think the first speaker mentioned about the individual, and I think it's about the working on the individual and promoting perhaps the evidence-based critical thinking, the dialogue that we talked about, developing empathy that we talked about. And that is the only way we can overcome the primitive urges of hatred and the cognitive error that sustain it. So in this context, the Federation of Muslim Organizations and the masajid and the madrasas, the evening schools and the Muslim communities, which is again a very diverse Muslim community, what do? I mean, I think fundamentally, we promote the learning of humanistic perspective, recognize the universal similarities of all human beings, and let the empathy, caring, and compassion be in to replace the hate. In short, teach the tolerance. Since hate can only be sustained by errors in reasoning, it can be eliminated by reappraising and correcting those errors, enabling or empowering people to work to transform your enemies into friends should be the key motto, I believe. History bears witnesses and shows us very clearly that in the past, how successfully people of different religions lived together and provided safety for each other. Why is it so different in this century? We need to have that self-examination. Muslim community itself is a very diverse community in many respects, linguistically, culturally, dietary requirements, and many geographical areas. Despite all that, we see the annual pilgrimage, which is the season of Hajj, where people from all corners of the world will peacefully come together, spend time together, and fulfill their religious obligation in a most peaceful way. Throughout the day, 5 times a day, I would say, throughout the day, by organizing congregational prayers, we are again reminded of that common humanness and connecting that human beings in a friendly way. It is a part of our belief that we are accountable, and I think hereafter has been mentioned by the first speaker, that we are accountable and will have to be answered for in the hereafter for any injustice, any hatred, any revenge that we have carried out in this life. And I think that fear of accountability plays a huge role in most people in terms of changing their thinking. I like the idea of the first speaker, and I believe that it's our own thinking where the change has to take place. And I think even Darsheet mentioned about the individual reform, and I think the first step is to change the thinking. I would say we need to act together, we need to unite together, we need to support each other, and we need to report, and that's where I think Ben's agency will come in and encourage people to report. But at the same time, as the religious groups and religious organizations and community groups, I huge emphasis on creating an alternative. And the alternative is, a very good example happened a few months ago in York City, where a community decided to organize an opposition rally outside the mosque. And the mosque management committee decided to go out and meet them and invite them for a cup of tea inside the mosque, which after long negotiation happened, and it ended up with the positive outcome. And I think that is the way forward. Engagement in dialogue are the key significant issues we are involved, and we encourage all members to follow it up in teachings and practices, mosque open days, mosque visits, iftar events, I think already pointed out by the Dialogue Society, food bank to support the vulnerable, and lots of our madrasa children are acting as the volunteers for the charitable organizations, and also at times collect charity fund for supporting the vulnerable children and vulnerable people in the community. These are few examples of developing that human connections that we need in promoting the sympathy and in promoting the humanitarian causes. I would say, and I think it has been already pointed out, that hate is opposite of love, and we cannot ignore, or we cannot have this evening without the mention of Rumi, who comes from Konya in Turkey. And I was fortunate enough in the beginning of 2020, early months, January, February time, to visit Konya. And what was most striking about Konya was that the local authority, equivalent of city council or municipal corporation, has put up the boards. You are in the city of love. Konya is a city of love. What did Rumi say? Very clearly, he promoted, do good to the people for the sake of God, or for the peace of your own soul, that you may always see what is pure and save your heart from the darkness of hate. Again, from the city of love, Konya, and from the inspirational Sufi saint, Rumi, who said very clearly that every time we fall in love, we test the heaven. And every time we hate, envy, or fight someone, we tumble straight into the fires of hell. The only thing is that can set the human beings free is the forgiveness. All our contributions that I personally feel stems from these kind of teachings and these kind of traditions. We believe that everyone has a role in stopping the hate and hate crime and creating safe and inclusive communities. The Muslim community in the city, all sections of the Muslim community, and in the county are playing a very significant role in contributing substantially in preventing this huge concern of hate crime. We engage, we work together, we coordinate with all sorts of community groups, community organizations, and statutory agencies to ensure that the city that we all love remains safe and free from the hate crimes. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Abdul Karim. I'm from Konya myself, and yes, as Rumi said, we should keep our hearts from darkness of hate. Hate really has no place, and we should do everything in our power to challenge it. And consequences need to be considered. We should spread love so that it influences those who do not consider the consequences. And we need to act together, and we need to support each other. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Now on to our next guest, Ben Smith, who is the Community Coordinator at Leicester City Council, Community Safety Team. On to you.
Super. Thank you, Beza. And thank you to all the esteemed community colleagues and Dialogue Society members who I know so well now. Thank you for inviting me to tonight's session. It's a real honour, and it was great to see the video a bit earlier on, just celebrating some of the events that have been held face-to-face in previous years, and very much looking forward to similar face-to-face events in the future. But it's great to be here tonight, and great to make the connection. It certainly put a smile on my face just seeing you all and hearing your words so far. And I hope it's okay for this evening's sort of discussion. I just wanted to, I suppose, add a practitioner side and talk about maybe the practical side of countering hatred and countering extremism, because we hear terminology and we hear definitions, but sometimes, obviously it's important to acknowledge that, but what's the real side of it? What does delivery actually look like, and how does that really tangibly affect people? So I know Abdul Karim mentioned statistics and things like that. I'm not actually going to talk about statistics tonight even. I just want to talk about maybe the reality and what people experience, and maybe how their lives are benefited through some of the community initiatives that we see. So I'll run through a number of examples, if that's okay, and hopefully that will provide a flavour of the practical ways in which we can have dialogue and how we can bring communities together. So as been mentioned, my role, I'm the Leicester Counter-Extremism Community Coordinator, and I've been in that role now for 3 years. And it's in the name, the community is in the name, so the role is very much around working in partnership with community. It's a means, so I'm part of a national network, and it's a means of connecting a national programme with community, and myself and about 35 other community coordinators around the country act as that conduit between national policy and then the local delivery. Within my role, I'm based within the city, but also work across the county of Leicestershire as well. And over the past year or so, I've been given the ability to start working across into Lincolnshire and also Northamptonshire as well. And it's interesting really to compare, the community issues that arise, and equally the similarities that communities may face, whether it be in Leicester, the city, or even out in sort of rural Lincolnshire as well. So for me as a practitioner, it's really interesting to understand some of the issues and maybe the tensions that arise. Within the strategy that I deliver, it's part of the national counter-extremism strategy. And I think also it's really important to make people stop and think, and what does counter-extremism mean? What does extremism mean as well? Because it is, often interpreted as an incredibly negative way. It represents negative action, and arguably, I suppose, action that is even kind of above the level of hatred. If someone's extremist, they really are kind of on the edge of things. But when I'm working within the field of counter-extremism, I'm thinking about sort of key risks and key harms. Thinking just about some of the key ones, I'd be thinking about cohesiveness and how cohesive a community or a society is. And again, what are the indicators and what are the risks within that? I'm then thinking about maybe within the legal parameters of what we call harmful illegal cultural practice and illegal practice, maybe violence against women and girls, and that type of sad, sort of tragic activity. We're also considering maybe where communities or individuals are rejecting democracy as well, where there might be alternative systems of law proposed. Ultimately, we're also considering the risks of terrorism as the kind of the ultimate act, which is again fairly terrible and horrific to think about. But then also within that scheme, we do then have to have consideration as coordinators of hate crime. So whilst I'm not the designated hate crime officer, I do have to have a broad understanding of what hate crime looks like within the city of Leicester, for example. To help my work, I'm then part of a national programme, so that's called Building a Stronger Britain Together. The acronyms for that are BSBT, and that's the National Counter-Extremism Programme. And in the 3 years that I've been in the role here, I mean, it does genuinely make me incredibly proud to see that we've had 12 BSBT projects delivered within Leicester, all vastly different, all working in sort of different areas of the city as well. So I'll just maybe run through just a handful of some of those projects to give you an idea of the types of organisations that deliver, but equally the type of community involvement that brings as well. But just before I do that, in terms of the here and now, I was actually part of a celebratory event this afternoon as part of the national BSBT programme, and it was an opportunity for 4 projects kind of at random from across the country to talk about their experience. So whilst I will focus on the Leicester perspective, because I was quite inspired by what I heard today, I just wanted to mention, if it's okay, sort of 2 or 3 other projects as well that again hopefully will show what, you know, countering hatred, what countering extremism looked like, and equally kind of that thread of dialogue, you know, how that is the core to a lot of this work as well. I've obviously heard the word dialogue mentioned, you know, through other speakers previously to myself. The first project that I just wanted to mention from today was a fascinating project. It's a Bristol city-based project called Integrate UK. And a lot of their work is around kind of harmful practice, the exploitation of young people, those kinds of things. But the project they were talking about today was a digital project called Vitriol. And it's a video that they've actually produced. And it's a group of very sort of young people in Bristol. And we actually had, as part of their presentation today, a young chap called Victor, who's now in year 10. But when he produced the video, he was only in year 8, you know, year 8, really young man. But he came across so well, and to hear kind of his learning of being involved in that project, you know, from 2 years ago, even to where he is now, the way he conducted himself, the things he's learned. The project was essentially looking at, even kind of within the school environment, sort of interrace relationships, whether that be boyfriend and girlfriend or just friendships more generally. But it was looking at kind of the bonds and the similarities that actually kind of form those school friendships in Bristol, and how actually, without even thinking about them in school, they're really important to have, you know, friendships can cross boundaries. And I think when you're in year 7 or 8, you may not think of yourself as crossing boundaries, but this project kind of allowed some of the young people to reflect on that and then make videos and even in some cases music videos. But really powerful to hear that friendship, you know, between communities, which I think is so important, providing the young people with skills to maybe acknowledge and celebrate that as young people, but even moving on into adulthood, how they can kind of carry that with themselves, and equally what skills can they take as well to you know, into adulthood. The second project I just wanted to mention was actually a drama-based project, and that's a Birmingham-based project by an organisation called Recreate Now. And that was, again, very powerful, but it was using the means of drama and dramatics to create spaces where young people could really explore the theme of identity, who they are, where their parents had come from, heritage. And again, I suppose it did delve into friendships as well. But this was, you know, this was going down in the age group to 10 and 14-year-olds. So really, you know, quite young people to explore kind of their history, where they'd come from, you know, their British links and where they are now in modern day Britain. But it was using the drama and the dramatics for those young people to kind of create strong narratives about who they are and be proud of their communities, but equally showcase how communities, again, can work together and how there can be those bonds, those shared experiences and friendships across communities. So to hear again from that today, for me, was really impactful. And I've been doing this work for three years, but it, you know, again, it shows you can hear new things, and as a practitioner, I'm constantly learning as well. Moving, I suppose, to the Leicester perspective, and again, why I'm so proud about what we've delivered in Leicester. One of the projects that I wanted to mention tonight, and it's in no particular order, it's just a project that, again, I've been involved with, and I think links quite nicely with the discussion we're having this evening. But one of our funded projects through 2019 through to March this year was with the Leicester Riders, the basketball club based in the centre of the city. The Leicester Riders have a charitable arm of the organisation called the Leicester Riders Foundation, and they're involved in huge amounts of youth work and, again, work to bring communities together. But we successfully bid for Home Office money for them to deliver a BSBT project. And that project, after their sort of multiple championship wins over the past couple of seasons, which is a celebration in itself, they called this project the One Team Leicester project. They saw the success that they had on the court, and they wanted to kind of replicate that within the Leicester community. And so that was delivered, like I said, through last year into the first half of this year. It worked with 5 secondary schools in Leicester, had really interesting take-up, focusing on kind of structured workshops, again, on community difference, community similarity, shared experience. There was obviously a basketball element to it as well, because the young people wanted to play basketball. But as the project progressed, and then, you know, I obviously got project feedback as it went on, it was really interesting to hear about the dialogue, the conversations, what the children might have initially seen as, oh God, do we have to talk about things? Can we not just go and play basketball? But it got to a point very quickly in the project where they wanted that kind of theme of the week. They were looking at current affairs. This involved, sadly, incidents of hate crime nationally, high-profile incidents. But this, importantly, was providing for that kind of that space where they could, as young people, explore maybe the hurt that they'd feel or the lack of understanding. Why on earth would someone want to do that to someone else? What was the difference? So, really, really important for those young people to have the discussions. And again, over the course of the year, I think genuine progression in mindset that the young people had, and there was no real reason for those young people put into the project. It wasn't as if they were cherry picked as being, oh gosh, they're problem kids, what are we going to do with them? It wasn't that. It was actually children wanted to be part of the project. Maybe some better than others, but it didn't matter. There was still a parity there in terms of them being involved. And then within the 5 secondary schools that were involved, it then ended up in a basketball tournament that was held at the Morningside Arena in February, and that was called the One Team Leicester Tournament. I was there. It was great to kind of be a part of. But what the children didn't, or the school students didn't expect, was that they expected to go there and play in their school teams. But what we did, with them knowing in advance, was we were going to split them up, and they had to kind of play and form teams really, really quickly. Within 10, 15 minutes of being there, they weren't in their school teams. They were with other kind of young people. And I think they learned some real lessons there that, you form teams, you form bonds with people really quickly as well. And any kind of preconceptions they might have had about a secondary school on the other side of Leicester didn't matter. They were part of the same team. So it was a real kind of, practical lesson from them. So I hope it's okay. I just wanted to, relate it really to what the real life picture looks like. Those young people might not necessarily have thought they were part of a counter-extremism project, which is fine in one sense. But ultimately, I think that's definitely what we've got achieved out of the project. Safeguarding communities, building understanding amongst one another, maybe reducing lack of trust between communities as well. So we hope that it's a launch pad for a lot of those young people. I actually got a really nice phone call from the Leicester Riders about 3 or 4 weeks ago, just saying, Ben, I know the project's finished. It was 6 months ago, but just to let you know that like 5 of the young people from one particular secondary school, they're now part of our kind of recruitment. They're part of our youth club. Before the project, they weren't even really involved in basketball, but for those young people, it's now put them on a really positive, pathway in terms of sports as well. So, great opportunity for them. So yeah, that's some of the projects. What I'm going to try and just do very briefly, I'll try and play a 2-minute video that just showcases maybe an example and some of the sentiment that we're sort of working within communities. So I'll just play, it's about 2 minutes long. I'll play the video and just make some final comments when I've showed the video.
My name's Hema and I'm a victim of domestic violence. Through difficulties with both my husband and my own son, I found it quite hard to socialise with people. I'd become quite depressed and I became a recluse. I walked into the Shammers Centre. They make you feel welcome. And I went upstairs and they were making food. I ended up joining the cooking class at the Shammers Centre. I just couldn't believe how diverse this centre is. It was just amazing. It then opened my eyes up as to how I've been treated, how I've been bullied. I met Shaheen in January. She's a shoulder to lean on. I was sort of put against Muslims because my husband didn't like them.
Hema's Hindu. The differences between us are not important. I don't think that religion makes any difference in that sense. She'll ring me, text me, she talks to me all the time.
We're like sisters and she makes me smile. We have a laugh and a joke. Creative minds creating stronger communities is getting a range of people together to learn new things, old things, reviving skills that you have, and mixing Hindu people with Muslim people, with Christian people, with Jewish people to get us to be united as a family. I feel at home here. I look forward to coming here. They make you believe and give you confidence. Shama is the place to come if you feel you need a friend, and they have become my friends. They've actually become my family.
And it was a creative project, so creative minds creating stronger communities. And it was a way of bringing women from across East Leicester together to essentially know one another, but equally get to know more about one another's culture, and maybe provide a space where they could ask questions that they wouldn't ordinarily ask. Even if they should have asked, they didn't feel comfortable doing. But that video, just briefly there, showcases a case study where there was a local Hindu lady who'd never formed any kind of connection or much dialogue really with Muslim communities in Leicester. But what's really powerful about that project is that it enabled not only connections to be made, but on the basis of going along to the weekly sessions over a period of months, some incredibly strong friendships are formed. And it kind of takes any kind of stereotype and all, you know, just lets that flood away really. So at the end, you just witness this fantastic, you know, this fantastic friendship form. And that in essence is what we're trying to do through the Building a Stronger Britain Together programme. So yeah, just wanted to use some of those examples really, just to kind of maybe go into a bit more detail about what counter-extremism might be, but to really show the reality of what it can be. But again, focusing on the dialogue and that building, you know, forever building that community understanding. So I'll leave it there. So thank you very much for having us.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. And honestly, building a stronger Britain together sounds amazing. And hopefully all your efforts will be rewarded. I personally, when I first arrived in the UK, I was quite worried about, you know, having to adapt to a new place and if I was going to be accepted. But I can say from the bottom of my heart that especially in Leicester, it's very diverse and everyone really does look out for you. And I didn't struggle adapting at all, and I felt accepted the moment I came. So yeah, like all your works and all the community efforts and everything does, you know, help and yeah, makes Leicester a greater place to live in. We now have a special calligraphy show prepared by Mrs. Cakmak, who is a calligraphy and watercolor artist. And the show is accompanied by an original music performance using our Turkish traditional instrument, saz, recital by a very talented Dialogue Society volunteer. Just relax and enjoy the video. Satisfying watching calligraphy, and I personally like the sound of the saz. Thank you, Mrs. Cakmak. Now on to our next guest, Manjula Sood, MBE City Mayor's Faith and Community Advisor, also the Director of Leicester Council of Faiths, member of Bishop Faith Forum, and the first Asian woman Lord Mayor of UK. On to you, Manjula Sood.
Thank you, Baz. I said there's not much left for me to say. All those speakers, they have really been very powerfully they have spoken on hate crime. And first of all, I would like to say thank you to Dialogue Society putting up this event in order to consolidate the fellowship between our Leicester communities and your contribution to prevention of hate crime. When I was thinking, and I thought it won't be fair if I don't pay tribute to a famous Turkish man, Ugar Sahin, who went to Germany as an immigrant. And look, he has produced the medicine for COVID. He's going to save the whole world. How can we hate anybody, when the immigrants, they come to any country, how they're treated, majority of them, it's very, very painful. So this we should never forget that who is going to bring talent with them and who's going to help us. And on the other hand, there is so much definition for hate crime, We can read books and books. Like Home Office, they have got their statement, Action Against Hate, which report was 2016, and it details a crime that is motivated by hostility on the grounds of race, religion, sexual orientation, disability, faith, you name anything, faith or belief. But the reality of life is that attitude of hate exists in every community, every society, everywhere we go. Look, we say America is a very developing country, UK is a developing country, but no, the hate crime is, in fact, sometimes victims, they suffer in silence. They don't come forward to seek help because they are fearful that they will be judged sometimes. And hate, it brings a very unpleasant vocabulary: racism, discrimination, verbal abuse, swearing, intimidation, bullying. And there is a difference between hate incident and hate crime. Hate incident is any non-crime incident which is perceived by the victim or any other person to be motivated by hostility or prejudice. And hate crime is it becomes a criminal offense when the physical force is being used. And or any other person who's motivated by hostility, as I said, and prejudice. I was born in Hindu faith. And as I was growing up, my faith has taught me 5 basic human values: truth, righteousness, peace, love, and non-violence. And we have tried to practice that. When I left India after getting married to coming to England, my grandfather told me, he said, when you go there, you might find people's attitude different, but you ask yourself how you are going to contribute, how you're going to love people. So when I arrived here, those days, it was more difficult even to go and report anywhere. I have been a victim of hate crime as well. And I was the first female Asian primary school teacher. Next to my school was National Front's office. And my sari was pulled, and it only saved because I had a cardigan on it. So this is why I feel very, very strongly about it, that when the women are being discriminated, what they wear, what they do. So hatred is your attitude. It's your mindset. You can take the good out of situation, or you can take the bad out of situation. And Leicester is under the spotlight, the diversity and engaging in giving a different identity, because it is gaining a global interest. Many people, they come to Leicester to see how Leicester has come to this, that different communities, they live differently. But still, having said that, I know we got cultural diversity, but still there is inequality, which the communities, they face every day, whether it's education, whether it is health, or whether it is other services approaching. And the visitors, when they come, they want to know what is the secret of Leicester's community cohesion, you know. But the police, I know one thing is now all the agencies like police, education, and especially football, you know, you can see which is very, the racism we feel, they are all taking these steps towards it. That how do we eradicate all these attitudes? What do we do? But still, the diversity is not reflected as it should have been in the workforce. And tangible interfaith engagement through a different set of dialogue. And I'm very proud to say that Dialogue Society was only founded in 1999 as a registered charity with the aim of advancing social cohesion by contacting and empowering people to engage and contributing to the development of ideas and building a better community. And they have done it practically because you hold seminars, you have discussions, workshops, conferences, and different academic publications. You know, these are the practical things which community, you are doing it as a community. But this has to be done more on a wider scale from all the authorities, you know, the lawmaking authorities who are providing services. And I know you have got committed staff and volunteers who have proven track record of working within the communities. And the Dialogue Society's objectives is to build a network of participants who can provide ongoing sense of support. And when I was the chair of Leicester Council of Affairs, I've seen the Turkish community bringing Noah pudding and distributing it to everybody in the city center, you know, especially High Cross, so irrespective of any faith or anything. So that sort of, and I know many people were very delighted, but still there was this element of it. Why they are doing it? This is our country. So to explain to people, but you can only explain and to people if they're willing to get engaged in dialogue. If they don't want to have a dialogue, you are like banging your head against the brick wall. So dialogue is very, very important. And in October, I know nationally we celebrate Hate Crime Awareness Week. But hate crime awareness, it should not be just for 1 week out of the year. It should be each and every day and every week of it. And sometimes these awareness weeks are only hosted, you know, in small or venues where many people are not even aware of what is happening. And this spread love, not hate. This should be the vision of everybody to share. And I know you, Dialogue Society they have put their hands up for challenges, but they celebrate differences. We should look at I know we should value the differences because we are all made difference. If you look at the nature, everything, there is a difference. But if we celebrate, if we get together, then those differences, they become our strength. Stronger we and united, if we are together, we can achieve a lot in society. And we have to take into account diversity and how to involve and how to work with the communities. You know, traditions are very important for every family. And we should be proud the faith which we are born. And through our faith, each and every faith teaches us good things. Look at Ramzan, how much, I mean, Muslim community, they raise thousands and thousands of pounds. And now look at this virus. The authorities haven't got enough means to help everybody. Who is doing it within their own communities? Nobody has gone hungry in this country and around the world. They're trying to do that. And they're all volunteers. They give their own money and they're all. So where does this element of hatred comes in? You know, when people are received to have food parcels and everything, that is okay. But when it comes to the gratitude, the attitude comes again sometimes. Oh, these people, they got enough money. They don't realize they don't got enough money. It's their attitude they have got. And managing diversity, we have to be very sensitive to. It's very important. And we have to fulfill our equality duty, no matter who we are. And when newcomers come to the country, we have to be very kind to them. and we have to recognize and support them. I know it is always say they come here for the benefits. No, they don't. They bring their skills. They bring their traditions. Look, Leicester, before the Uganda Asians came, the Indians came, it was a different city. And now it's the same city authority, economically different communities, what they have brought to the city. And the peace. And we love, everybody now likes to come and live in Leicester, because it's not that the services are priority, it's because the community feeling. This is why once I challenged even Trevor Phillips, his word ghettos, because that used to disturb me, trouble me. And I told him it's not the ghettos, it's the community's needs led, because communities like to live together. Look at the places of worship, they speak for themselves. Glory of God is sung in all languages here in Leicester. And that is the beauty of our work. And communities are being supported. And institutional structures, they have to provide ethnic minority community representation more and more. So, I mean, I can go on, but as I said, everybody, we have been a victim of hate crime, but how we have dealt, we can all give you our individual experiences. But once again, I will say thank you. And thank you very much for the lovely food, which you have sent it to our homes. But I will still say that my sisters, those who used to cook homemade food during iftar, and I mean, that was very delicious. And thank you very much. And let's keep this dialogue ongoing.
Thank you.
Talk more and more.
Thank you for your... Alaikum salam. Thank you for your kind words, Manjula. So, hate crime prevention should be a trending topic all year round, and we should dialogue to spread love, and we shouldn't close our eyes to what's going on. And we can keep thriving by involving ourselves and becoming a part of events and projects, creating opportunities like all of you are doing today. And we can only communicate and just hope that it makes a difference. And now I would like to hand over to Paul Walland, who is a volunteer and also the leader of the English Language Project at Open Hands. Thank you for joining us, Paul. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to listen to these contributions this evening. As you said, I'm here representing Open Hands, which is a charity based in Highfields. And so the reflections that I'll be bringing this evening are from my involvement with Open Hands. The charity started about 12 years ago, and I've been working with it since the beginning. And there are literally hundreds and hundreds of people who either volunteer or contribute food and other things that we give away. And that is people contributing from every community in Leicester. We're really grateful for the support that comes to Open Hands. We're probably best known as a charity for giving out food hampers and clothing, of course, and also the meal that we do on a Tuesday night for people who are homeless and in need. But I have the privilege of being able to lead with my wife from Bolivia the English language program that Besa referred to. That's been running for about 10 years. So with my involvement in all of those projects over the years, I've got to meet a lot of different people from different walks of society. There've been homeless people, there've been broken and hurting people, there've been asylum seekers and refugees, there've been brain surgeons and labourers, and there've been quite a lot of people from prison as well. It's been a pleasure to work with the charity to try to meet the needs of some of these people. And one of the things I really appreciate about Open Hands is that the approach that's adopted always is that we want to love people, treat them with dignity and respect. Things that I've heard already this evening that are the keys really to getting on with people. And we believe that every one of the people that come to us for something or other is precious. Some of them are badly damaged, we know that, but it doesn't devalue them in our eyes. We treat all people the same. We don't distinguish between people, of course, according to who they are, where they come from, or anything else. It really doesn't matter either what's happened to them to make them look the way they are. Because for us, each person is precious. I always like this demonstration. As you can probably see, we've got 2 £5 notes here. And, you know, some people are treated very well in life and grew up in nice families and they always look in mint condition. But there are other people in our city and around the world who don't fare so well. They get screwed up in their lives. People treat them badly. They could be trodden underfoot, you know, they could be dipped in the tea. But, you know, in the end of the day, they still carry the same value. It doesn't change. Now, with these, you've got the Queen on one side and you've got Churchill on the other. It's worth £5. But for us, our belief is that we are all made in the image of God and we are priceless. That's the first thing I want to say about what I see in Open Hands and the way it approaches people. But the key thing I think there is we can only give out that love if we have received it in the first place. It's really important that we love one another. That will make a huge difference. Another principle that I want to share is our belief that we can't love other people who we see if we don't get to know them, you know. We can't also say that we love God if we don't love our brothers. How can we say that we love a God who is removed from us if we can't show and demonstrate that love to a brother who is next to us? That love that we have to share, we believe, comes from God. And he distributes it throughout the world through our parents primarily and through our community. That love comes from him that we can share with other people. And things like hatred and prejudice, jealousy, anger, selfishness, these things do not come from God. The love comes from God. And in Open Hands in the English classes, we do express that love of God the best way we can, and that's practically, in as much as nobody is excluded, nobody is asked to pay, no one is excluded because of poverty, nobody is excluded because they come from a particular community or they're of a particular faith or race. We try to make sure that everybody feels welcome. We try to make sure that everybody feels part of a family once they come in. They belong, they find a place. We try to make sure that we encourage those who are struggling and that we will affirm and praise everybody for whatever progress they make in the area of language learning, regardless of how quickly they learn. You know, we're much more interested in how they're doing, whether they're committing themselves and trying to work to achieve something, not what they achieve in the end. And we try, of course, to make sure that whoever comes to us is given some latitude. They can't always come to us. They have other things to do, other meetings, responsibilities with their family, children. So we have to be fairly flexible and say, that's okay. And you do that because it's like a family. You understand that people have got other responsibilities. And I think this creating a family where people feel that they belong and are loved is really important. And we really want to make sure that all of our students know that we are actually rooting for them. We want them to do well. We would love them to be able to get good jobs if they can get it, you know? And that's just really important for us, that they should know that we care about them. They need to know that we put their interests even before our own. And really, I think this is the second point. We have to demonstrate love, and we have to demonstrate it in a practical way. Yeah. Over the years, we've had students from so many countries, you can't believe it. It's, I think altogether in Open Hands, it's more than well over 100. Probably we've had 30 or 40 in our English language program. A lot from the Middle East, but we've had Korea as well, Thailand, Spain. And it's great to be with everybody from these different cultures. And there are many things I enjoy about being with people from other cultures. And one of the things I enjoy particularly is the food that is often offered. You know, we don't miss many opportunities to have a bit of a celebration. And one way or another, it seems like hardly a month passes without some dish is produced from the nations. And I really enjoy that experience and tasting that food. I have to say, I was once offered a bag of maggots by a Thai student after I had given a class on food. And I did decline that, but by and large, most of what we're offered is really, really nice, really lovely. And that just gives me an intro to say, you know, I have enjoyed being with people from other cultures. I've learned a lot from being with people of other cultures from different places in the world. I've learned a lot about how countries are different to each other, how cultures vary, how different societies function, things I'd never thought of before I started this work in Open Hands. I've seen how lives can be wrecked in different countries. And I've seen how people, when they come here, struggle so much to try to establish themselves here very often. And they've lost everything. They've lost family connections, jobs, homes, the society, their belonging. It's really sad to see all of that. I've learned so much from having these relationships with people from around the world. And really, I don't know whether I'm just really privileged in the English language program to have met such special people, but I can honestly say that's the most decent, hardworking people that you would ever want to meet. I've met from the nations. People who work so hard to maybe keep down a job as well as study, as well as bring up children. And I admire them. And I can only say it's been a real privilege for me to be able to meet with people from different cultures. The English language program that we run gives us an opportunity to meet together. It gives us, maybe you want to say it's an excuse, although it has real practical value. But it's coming together and being able to focus on something of mutual interest, like the English, that allows us to get to know each other, to listen to each other, to talk to each other, open our hearts and our minds to each other. And this dialogue is really valuable. So perhaps I could just summarize them. The 3 lessons that I've learned through my involvement with Open Hands, which is pretty much the same as you have all shared as well, is that we need to understand that we are equally precious. And it doesn't matter what our differences are, how different we look on the outside or what's happened to us. We are all equally precious. We need to be brought up in an atmosphere of love. that will promote love. It will spread the love around. And finally, we just need to connect with each other, open our hearts and our minds to each other and talk to each other, which of course is what the Dialogue Society is all about. So thank you for giving me an opportunity to share.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us today, and thank you for your kind words, Paul. You're making me consider joining you at Open Hands, maybe for the food, but also the atmosphere you're reflecting through your experience. We do need to remember to value everyone for just being human and not put any filter on anyone and not look for any differences. So thank you for your thoughtful words, and I'm really happy for you and your experience in the past 12 years. I would now like to share with you artist Mehmet Salih's paint show dedicated to this event. Mehmet is also a fellow Dialogue Society volunteer, and thank you for your addition to the event, Mehmet. That was stunning. Thank you, Mehmet. And finally, before my closing remarks, I would like to share with you Director of St. Philip's Centre, Reverend Dr. Tom Wilson's special message dedicated to this event. Unfortunately, he could not join us live today. However, he kindly sent us this following message.
Thank you for the opportunity to share some thoughts with you this evening about hate crime, and I'm very sorry that due to other commitments I'm not able to join you in person, or at least live on a video screen. My name is the Reverend Dr. Tom Wilson, and I'm Director of the St. Philip's Centre based in Evington. During this past year, we've been very fortunate to be working with Leicester City Council and the Safer Leicester Partnership on a project called Listening and Action, Understanding Community Concerns Around Hate Crime and Community Cohesion. I'm going to take a few minutes to share with you some of the findings of that research and then a few of my own thoughts about it. Just to check I've got my facts right, we did the project in 3 stages. First of all, we did 22 individual interviews, following that with 10 focus groups where we triangulated our findings, and then there were some follow-up projects, and I will tell you about each of those 3 stages. So first of all, the individual interviews, and the most striking comment from one of the interviews was the interviewee who said that in her experience, hate crime is such a normal thing that she doesn't even really notice it happening. That was a sentiment not echoed, not precisely in those words, but certainly the idea ran through a number of the interviews that we conducted. A second point made by several interviewees was that many in Leicester live in what they called siloed communities, communities divided, say, where a particular faith or ethnic group live primarily a self-contained existence, not really feeling the need to engage with those who came from a different part of the world or had a different faith perspective, or just for other reasons saw the world very differently. And again, a number of people echoed that thought. And it's one that I would say I've observed in my time as director of the St Philip's Centre, that while there are many people who work very hard to ensure that communities engage with each other, that there is that cross-fertilisation of ideas and interaction, not everybody is engaged with this. A number of those who were interviewed also commented on the challenge of COVID-19, the fact that nowadays we're mainly interacting with each other via video screens, seeing each other just in 2D rather than in 3D in person, makes it that much harder to engage and get on with each other. This, I think, raises a question for us. Even though the vaccine has started to be rolled out, it's still going to be several months before we're all able to interact in the way we were back in January. So what are we going to do in that ensuing period, and how are we going to get ready for when we are able to engage face to face? Having conducted our individual interviews, we also ran, as I said, 10 focus groups. Many of them confirmed the findings of the individual interviews, especially this point about hate crime being a normal experience. That is to say, one that's so common, why would you bother to report it? This, I think, is a particularly difficult challenge for those who work in the statutory agencies, in the police and the local authority in particular. They want to understand what's happening around hate crime, but if, in all honesty, many hate crimes or hate incidents, there isn't enough evidence to be able to prosecute. If you take an all too common example, if someone shouts abuse from a car and then drives off, and the victim is so stunned by what they've just heard that they don't note down the license plate, it's not going to be possible to prosecute that person. There needs to be some clear evidence for the Crown Prosecution Service to take on the hate crime and bring it to prosecution. So what should be done in these circumstances? What came across from many of the interviewees and from the focus groups is that while they recognise this problem, they recognise that not every hate incident, every hate crime is going to be prosecuted, that there isn't enough evidence, there aren't the witnesses and so forth, that route cannot be followed. But that doesn't mean to say nothing at all can be done. What those who are victims of hate crime really want is to be heard, to have the opportunity to talk with somebody else about what they've experienced, to work out how they're going to move forward, how they're not going to let this particular unfortunate or distressing incident define their life. How are they going to get on with people who are different? How are they going to get on within their own community? What is their strategy for living and enjoying life and flourishing in Leicester? That, I think, is the big need of many in our communities, to be heard and to be equipped to live well together. All of us have a part to play in responding to that. There's a phrase used in hate crime education that we need to move from being a bystander, those who just watch, to being upstanders, those who stand up, who are active in saying, not in my name, this is not acceptable. Yes, of course you have the right to wear those things you choose to live the lifestyle that you choose to, provided you are not harming or upsetting anybody else unnecessarily. You absolutely have the right to live in that way, and we want to defend and support you in that, even where we may personally find some of your aspects, say, of your particular faith tradition, ones that we personally don't accept. That's no reason not to support, love and care for other people and ensure that they can live the life that they want to live. Our focus groups encouraged us that there are many people who want to take positive steps to build a cohesive society here in Leicester, to enable people to encounter, understand and respect and those who are different, and even build relationships of trust with people who are different. And so it was a great pleasure to see a number of projects come out of the report. One of them thanked volunteers that came forward during COVID-19. Many people had never volunteered before. This was their first step in helping those outside their immediate family and friends, and it was fantastic to be able to support those people and to celebrate all they had given. A Hindu faith group worked particularly on reclaiming the swastika. an ancient Hindu religious symbol that has been co-opted by the far right, and they work particularly with young people in their community to reclaim their own spiritual heritage for themselves. A number of groups wanted to engage particularly with the police. There's a particular challenge for those who are new migrants recently arrived to this country who don't understand how the British policing by consent system works, who don't understand how to report a hate crime or hate incident. So there was some work done to overcome some of those barriers. We did some particular work in helping communities understand and respond to anti-Muslim hatred in particular, to give, again, particularly to give people confidence in approaching the police and engaging with them where they have concerns. We also facilitated and supported people to meeting online, sharing their own ideas, thoughts, experiences, recipes and things from their own cultures. Just enabling people to understand and appreciate difference a little bit more. These very basic building blocks are still really important, and we still have to keep working on ensuring that they are in place so that Leicester is a place where all can flourish. But so what? What difference will all of this make? It won't change the entire world, but for those who took part, I think it was an opportunity for them to share their own experiences, thoughts and views, and also to hear the thoughts, experiences and views of other people. It's really important that we keep those channels for dialogue and communication open, which is why I think it's really important that the work of the Dialogue Society continues. And thank you for all that you do to ensure that people can understand, engage with and respond to difference, building relationships of trust and cooperation for the good of all people. As a Christian, I'm very conscious of the teachings of Jesus, and in particular the fact that he commands me to love my neighbour, and that he defines neighbour as pretty much anybody. He also tells me I must love my enemies, which basically means my task as a Christian is to love everybody as I love myself, to ensure that everybody, including myself, have what we need to flourish, that we are equipped and enabled to be the people whom God has created us to be. This season in the church's year is called Advent. It's the run-up to Christmas. Christmas, of course, is the time where we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ. But in the season of Advent, Christians remind themselves of their belief that Jesus will come back to judge the world, and he will ask me as one of his followers to give an account of the life that I have lived. What have I done with the gifts, the opportunities that he's put before me? So as I close, I want to share with you my commitment to be as active as I can in encouraging community cohesion, in challenging hatred and prejudice, both out of a love for my friends and neighbours, and also out of a recognition that the one who I call my Saviour and my Lord expects this of me, that he calls me to love and care for all people, whether I can meet them in face-to-face or whether merely through a video. Thank you for this opportunity to share with you, and may I wish you all the best for a peaceful Christmas and a prosperous New Year.
Thank you, Reverend. I'd like to say my closing remarks, and then I'll finish the program, the event. Hate crime prevention is an important topic, and I truly believe that taking this opportunity to share our thoughts on the subject with each other and emphasizing the importance is very necessary. I thank every one of you for enlightening us today. Christmas isn't just a time to exchange presents, it is an opportunity for us to get together and be there for each other, especially in these unprecedented times. I pray that the love we share through this society is reflected and accepted. I hope our voices are heard and that it influences those around us to become an upstander and not a bystander. We are here to defend each other and dive deep into the problem so we can eliminate the issue and dialogue effectively. Thank you again for joining us today. I hope to see you all in future events. And once this virus is out of the picture, it would be lovely to see you all in person too. Please stay safe and take care of yourselves.